There is a story of a man who sat by a river, hour after hour, staring into the screen of his phone. When asked what he was searching for, he replied, "I don't know, but I can't stop." Have you ever wondered what happens to a person when the world fades away, when the glow of a screen becomes their only light? What unfolds in the spaces between swipes and taps, in the quiet void behind the notifications? Is it connection they crave? Or is it something far more unsettling, an escape from the silence of their own mind? Could it be that the more we drown in the digital noise, the more we are running not toward something, but away from ourselves? We live in an age that treats stillness like a threat, a vacuum to be filled with endless scrolling, endless distraction. We are told that to be offline is to be left behind, that presence is measured in likes, in shares, in the constant hum of validation. But what if the opposite were true? What if every minute spent lost in the digital haze is a minute stolen from the only conversation that truly matters, the one with ourselves? This is not a speech about technology. This is a speech about what we avoid when we refuse to look away from the screen, about the truths that surface only in the absence of distraction, the ones we've been too busy to hear. The ancients knew this well. They understood that silence is not emptiness, but a mirror, a place where a man is forced to confront what he's been too afraid to face. So let us begin there, in the quiet of that reflection, and see what stares back. Imagine a person who has spent years with a phone in their hand, not out of necessity, not out of purpose, but out of habit. Or perhaps not even habit, but fear, the slow creeping dread of what might rise up in the absence of noise. What happens to such a person? Do they grow or do they shrink? The world will tell them they are connected, that they are part of something vast. But the philosophers ask a different question. What if the greatest connection is not to the world outside, but to the world within? What if the purpose of putting down the phone is not to disconnect from others, but to reconnect with the self we've buried beneath the feed? Think of Nietzsche, who wandered the mountains alone, writing not for an audience, but for his own unraveling. His words were not composed for likes, but for the brutal clarity of self-reckoning. He did not need the crowd to define him. He needed only the storm inside his own mind, the tempest of his own thoughts. And so it is. With the person who dares to unplug, they are not missing out. They are not falling behind. They are, in fact, living more deeply than most, because they have no choice but to meet what they've been running from. No curated personas, no filters, no endless scroll to numb the ache. Just the raw, unfiltered truth of their own existence. Ask yourself, what would you hear if you listened to the silence beneath the noise? What would you feel if you stopped drowning out the discomfort with another video, another post, another hit of dopamine? There is a moment in every digital detox when the person realizes they are not bored. Not in the way the world thinks of boredom, but in a way far more terrifying and liberating. They realize they are alone with themselves, and that self is vast, uncharted, full of shadows and light they've spent a lifetime avoiding. The more we reach for our phones, the more we are refusing to reckon with this truth, that we are both the escape and the escaped, that the validation we seek online was always a poor substitute for the acceptance we deny ourselves. The Stoics call this the obstacle is the way, not because the path is easy, but because the only way out is through. Consider the story of the sculptor who chips away at the marble, not to create something new, but to reveal what was always hidden inside. The person who puts down their phone is that sculptor, and their life is the marble. Every moment of stillness is another chip, another layer removed until what remains is unshakable, undeniable truth. But here's the challenge. Will they embrace what they find, or will they reach again for the screen, for the easy out, for anything that will drown out the voice of their own solitude? And now a question for you. Have you ever let the silence linger long enough to hear your own thoughts? Not the ones shaped by algorithms, not the ones fed to you by the timeline, but the ones that rise up from the depths when all else falls away. The more we resist the pull of the digital, the more we hear that voice. At first, it is unsettling. Then, if we dare to listen, it becomes the only voice that matters. This is the gift of presence, not emptiness, but clarity, not absence, but confrontation, the confrontation of the self, unmasked, unedited. The ancients taught that the soul speaks in whispers, drowned out by the noise of the world. It does not compete with the endless scroll. It does not shout over the notifications. It simply waits. And in that waiting lies our choice. Because if the soul will not scream for our attention, then we must learn to listen in the quiet. So I ask you again, what happens to a person when they stop seeking themselves in the glow of a screen and start finding themselves in the dark? What becomes of them when they realize that their worth is not measured in followers, but in the depth of their own reflection? Perhaps you've felt it already, that quiet pull, that stirring in your chest, when you consider what might be waiting for you on the other side of the screen. Not because someone else posted it, but because you finally paused long enough to see it. If this journey resonates with you, if you've ever wondered what you might discover in the silence, then you understand why we must keep going. There is more to uncover, more to face. And if you're willing to walk this path a little further, then stay with me. Like and subscribe so we can continue this conversation, so we can keep peeling back the layers together. Because the truth is, this is only the beginning. The more we resist the escape of the digital, the more we begin to understand that the phone was never the problem. It was the symptom of a world that has forgotten how to be still, how to be alone, how to be unafraid of its own thoughts. The world rushes by in a blur of updates and alerts, in desperate swipes for the next hit of distraction, while the brave stand still. And in that stillness, they discover something extraordinary. They are free from the constant need to perform. Free from the silent anxiety of comparison, free from the illusion that connection is measured in pixels. The philosophers asked, what is more valuable, to be seen or to be real? The person who unplugs learns the answer. They learn that the greatest connection is not the one that binds them to the world, but the one that binds them to themselves. Think of Thoreau, who left the noise of society for the quiet of Walden Pond. Stripped of every distraction, he did not wither. He wrote some of the most enduring words of his age. He realized that no external noise could define him unless he allowed it. The same is true for the person who dares to look up from their phone. Society may label them disconnected, but they know a secret. They have lost nothing essential. In fact, they have gained something rare, the ability to hear themselves think in a world that insists on shouting. But here is the paradox. The more comfortable they become in the quiet, the more they attract. Not because they seek attention, but because they no longer need it. There is a magnetism in a person who has made peace with solitude, who carries their own presence so effortlessly that others sense it. They linger, curious, wondering how they move through the world so unburdened. What they don't see are the hours spent in the quiet, the battles fought with boredom, the moments of discomfort faced head-on. Yet this path is not without its trials. There are nights when the silence feels like a weight, when even the strongest wonder if they've made a mistake, if the digital world was the real one all along. The Stoics called this the test of the obstacle, the moment when the universe asks, "Do you really believe what you claim?" And so, the person who unplugs faces their own version of this test. They walk into a room where every head is bowed to a screen, where laughter is replaced by the tap of thumbs on glass. And for a moment, they feel the sting of exclusion. But then they remember, this is not exclusion. This is choice. They could have chosen differently, could have lost themselves in the feed, could have traded depth for dopamine, but they chose presence instead. Ask yourself, what is more painful? The discomfort of silence, or the slow erosion of self that comes from never hearing your own thoughts? The ache of missing out, or the ache of missing yourself because you've been too distracted to notice? The person who unplugs knows both pains, but they have learned that one is temporary while the other is a slow unraveling. There is a story of a man who sat by a river hour after hour, staring into the water instead of his phone. When asked what he was searching for, he replied, "I thought I was escaping the world. Now I know I was escaping myself." The journey from distraction to presence is the same. At first, the silence feels like retreat. Then one day, you realize it was never about hiding. It was about finding the parts of yourself that get drowned out in the noise, the dreams you forgot to chase, the voice you stopped hearing, the quiet, unshakable knowing that you were never lost, only distracted. And so we continue